In this video, I will attempt to outline a theory of the working principles of an astronautical drive system and how they work to power a vehicle, vessel, or craft. First, what is an astronautical drive? In short, an astronautical drive is a prime mover of any astronautical vehicle, vessel, or craft. Second, what is an astronautical drive system? In short, the astronautical drive system is all the necessary components and systems engineered for the operations of the drive system. There are four categories of drives which comprise the astronautical drive system. They are thrusters, hazard drives, slower than light (STL), and faster than light (FTL). The next category would be interdimensional or extranautical drives, but that is a topic for another video. A vehicle, vessel, or craft powered by astronautical drive system have four primary parts. First is the payload. A payload can be anything from a satellite, a warhead, or a crew for space exploration. Second is the cold start system. This can vary. Most common components of the cold start system are fuel tank, batteries, and capacitors. Sources of stored energy for use to produce power are said to be above the ground state. An empty fuel tank or dead battery is said to be at the ground state. These are the primary cold start components. When installed on a vehicle, vessel, or craft, the cold start components control whether the craft is below or at the ground state. When a craft is out of fuel, or its batteries, capacitors, or power cells are all drained and dead, the vehicle, vessel, or craft is said to be in a negative ground state. The negative ground state implies being lower than below the ground state, whereas below the ground state is implied as lower than the ground state. When the cold start components themselves are above their ground state, installed on board a vehicle, vessel, or craft, but the vehicle, vessel, or craft is turned off, the vehicle is below the ground state. This is the cold start state. Third is emergency auxiliary power, the ground state. When a vehicle, vessel, or craft is turned on, the cold start components activate and the vehicle enters safe mode, utilizing minimal operation systems to power the ship. Typically, emergency and mandatory lights will be activated. All emergency systems will activate. Safety systems are powered by emergency power. Once emergency power systems reach their ground state, auxiliary power system power on. Emergency systems are optimized to run indefinite from cold state components. This is why dead batteries and empty fuel tanks put the vehicle, vessel, or craft in a negative ground state. For some vessels, negative power will lead to containment breaches and critical meltdown. Auxiliary power activates all systems on the vehicle. This primarily drains the cold start components, but initiates the catalyst chamber. The catalyst chamber is the starter. It turns the engine over, so to speak. You can think of the cold start as putting your key into the ignition of your car. Now that the key is in the ignition, the potential of your car's ability to turn over and start is well above the ground state. Before you put your key in the ignition, your car's ability to start was below the ground state. When you turn on your key, once your car power system's turned on, you can play music, run your AC, activate some of the car systems, but you're running everything of the electrical power of the car's battery. Now the car is in the emergency state. Once you turn your key again, your starter engages. This is the auxiliary state. Your battery powers an electric motor which turns over the combustion engine, as well as powers your fuel pump and spark plugs. If the auxiliary state is successful, your car will turn on, and when you return your key back to the safety state, the starter will turn off, but the motor will continue to operate. Now your car is above the ground state. There is a generator attached to the car's engine called an alternator. The alternator produces electricity which keeps your batteries charged. The alternator also powers all of the car's systems as it produces more power than the battery. The alternator powers the spark plugs that combust the fuel which drives the engine so that the alternator can generate electricity. Fourth, maneuvering thrusters in hazard state. The nature and quality of the catalyst chamber is embodied within the next step. By some system mechanics, the primary thrusters and hazard engines are powered on using auxiliary power. Once they are on, the hazard engine produces sufficient power to power all of the ship's auxiliary systems. Now the craft is above the ground state. Thrusters operations turn on in much the same way that a car has an exhaust tailpipe. Waste energy is produced and must be transferred safely away from the prime mover. Some of this waste energy is rerouted for use as power. This is what primarily drives the thrusters once the vehicle is above the ground state. The exhaust produced by the hazard drive serves as the main power for the primary thruster system. Fifth, slower than light secondary reactors. From the power produced by the hazard drive, the ship's secondary reactors can be powered on. The ship's reactor is fuel. The ship reactor is the fuel/energy source which powers the STL drives. The warp foil works at +2 ground state, and their operations are required for STL drives to function properly. The STL drives can be ran directly off the power generated by the hazard drive. Doing so will result in the hazard drive losing their function as prime mover as they convert their power into energy production. Sixth, Ftl Primary Reactors. Once the STL drives are powered on the primary reactors, the ship's main power core can safely power on. This brings the ships up to the third ground state. For underpowered vehicles, vessels, and craft, the hazard drive, slower than light drive, and secondary reactor operate as a full system to maintain the safety systems for the main power core of the ship. Seventh, main power core. For more advanced ships, the main power core is self-regulating, utilizing slower than light power, utilizing STL power for auxiliary backup, and hazard drive power for emergency containment power.